Bailey Ober stinks right now, but like the Twins and Falvey like to say, we can fix him, but not before we get Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Brandon Warne. You can unfollow me on the tweets at Brandon_WARNE. You can find me over on the Blue of Sky at warren.bsky.social. I've been watching the Twins for over 30 years, covering them for about half that long, and been on you with this ride of Locked On Twins for 2+ years now. So kind of a fun little thing there. I am joined, as I always am, by Mr. Dave Brown, a BBWAA member and Joe Mauer Hall of Fame voter. How we doing?
I'm doing good, Brandon. I see that I've still forgotten to update my Twitter handle, but maybe you can get to me at Answer Dave Brown at Twitter. But
well, we need to question Dave Brown so he can answer Dave Brown, but it's Dave
no
Brown.
Questions. MLB. There's no questions. We can't.
Dave
do
Brown MLB.
David Brown _MLB. There's also an underscore in there.
Make sure you find them there. Get him well above 1,000 followers. We, in this episode, are going to be talking about Bailey Ober. And everyone knows he's been struggling. It's hard to miss because he's like 8 feet tall and he's given up homers that are like 800 feet long. I kid you not. Before we get into our show sponsor, I was working with the Mariners broadcast the other day, and I don't remember for sure if this was the Ober game or not, but they asked me to calculate if the homers the Mariners had hit that day combined would reach from the home plate at Target Field to the roof of Target Center. I kid you not, that actually happened. And we decided through our research that yes, the first 3 home runs of that game were long enough, just barely, to get to the roof. But before we get into our Bailey Ober discussion, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets when their first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel. Find that FanDuel app. Super easy to use. So, we are well aware of Bailey Ober's struggles. They have been homer-induced, I think, largely. And there's a lot of schools of thought out there. You'll get, I mean, right now, because the Twins are playing so badly, in general, like the malaise of how they're playing, everyone's got big, loud opinions of how to fix them. And since Ober is kind of like right at the forefront of that, people have a lot of opinions on how to fix Bailey Ober. And I have ideas. I don't think I'd say I have opinions. I have thoughts. But the ones you'll see are, just put him on the IL, let him sit for a while, because he was dealing with a hip thing. But that made more sense when the velo was down and whatever. I think it was the start against the Mariners. He allowed 7 in 1 inning and then 0 the rest of the way, except for a one-off by Canzone. That's right. Yeah, it was like 6 in 1 inning and then the 7th run late. So yeah, that was the game they were asking me about the home runs combined. I'm almost positive about it because that was the same night that Rocco Baldelli's contract news dropped and everybody was just apoplectic about it. But ultimately, when you look at this Bailey Ober situation, Dave, like I feel like a lot of people are convinced they have the answer, whereas for the next half hour or whatever, you and I are going to kind of just discuss ideas because, frankly, and our friend Greg likes to say this, nobody really knows what's going on outside of maybe the Twins and maybe Bailey Ober, and even they're expressing bewilderment at this point.
I think that's the key. I mean, we can talk about what to do with Bailey Ober all we want and talk about what other people are saying to do about Bailey Ober.
Yeah.
If the Twins knew what was wrong with him, as ball players like to say in other situations too, they'd fix it, or there wouldn't be a problem in the first place, or, it wouldn't be as bad as it is. An issue, there's still velocity issues just based on how he was pitching last year and when he was successful versus this year. So there's that. And there's that interval of velocity between the changeup and the four-seam fastball. And it's too close. And when the hitters are getting an idea of when they have less to worry about in the box, like, well, what's coming? Is it going to be a changeup? Is it going to be fastball? How fast are these pitches? When there's no margin for error, and even if there is even if it is a well-placed pitch, if it's slow enough and they know it's coming, they're going to hit it. And he's, he at least he can't break the Burt Blyleven record for home runs in a month because June is, as we record, it's still June, but the next game they play will be in July. So he can't do worse. So I don't know if the turn of a calendar is going to be have any significance whatsoever with Ober. It's a little frustrating because it seemed like even though his box scores were ugly in a couple of recent starts, things were combined to one inning. It seemed like he was getting better, or at least it wasn't getting worse. And then the Tigers game happened. So, short answer after a long answer, I don't know how to fix him either, but we're going to talk about it anyway.
Well, and it's kind of like having kids when you have a mess. You'd rather have a contained mess than just a widespread mess, right? Like it might still not look good, but when you contain the mess, it maybe gives you a better concept of how to straighten it up, clean it up. I will say this before we head off to our first break, because it's a little ways off yet. I don't believe shutting him down in any way, shape, or form is the solution. They're just, if you look at the velo, he's about a mile and a half, 1.3 below last year's average four-seam velocity. This year he's mixed into two-seamer, so there's not really a comparison there. But in spurts, he's gotten back to that. Now, that probably to me speaks more of how far down he was, that he's managed to nudge it back up a little bit to where it's within a mile per hour on the four-seam fastball. But I was more convinced a week to 10 days ago when Kyle Gibson was dropped by the Rays, opted out of his deal, that there was a path to signing him, putting, setting down, sitting down, and set, I never know, with Ober for a little while, and then getting him back going. I don't know how much you want to actually do that outside of an injury in this context, but there's people who have that opinion. Set him down for 15-day IL, 10 days rest, a rehab start, maybe 8 days rest, a rehab start, and then whatever. I don't think that's the answer. I'm not at a point where I think that you can do that. Maybe if Pablo Lopez and Zebby were healthy, you could do something like that. I just, now that I put this out there, they'll probably end up doing it because that's kind of the luck I have. But I just, in my heart of hearts, I do not think what people will call the phantom IL. He actually does have something bothering him, so it wouldn't be lying. Like Terry Ryan used to say, that's illegal. Because like Mike Berardino would say, well, can't you just put him on the IL? And Terry would look at him like he's looking down the barrel of a shotgun and say, that's illegal. And it was just hysterical. But yeah, you wouldn't be doing anything uncouth or unethical to put Ober on the IL if something's bothering him. I just don't think anymore that that's the path. The velo's back. He's had spurts where he's been better. I just don't think the IL is the answer.
Well, you pointed out, you alluded to one of the issues that isn't necessarily with Bailey Ober, the individual, but with the Twins as an organization. And that is, what is the alternative right now?
Right.
If the Twins think that what's going on now, and I haven't talked to Bailey Ober since whenever they were in Kansas City, so it's been a while. So I'm not in the clubhouse to answer these kind of questions. I don't know what this is doing to his confidence. People are assuming that it is affected by it, and maybe it is. And sometimes players deal with crises of confidence that it's not that they've lost it, but maybe they were questioning themselves a little bit. If the Twins think that he is not doing himself irreparable harm by going through this slump, then they don't really have an alternative but to keep him out there because they don't have anybody in the minors who you're going to bring up right now. They've already done that. Yep. They brought back Simeon Woods Richardson. Zebby's hurt. So, I mean, those are the best alternatives. Andrew Morris has been dealing with injuries in the minors.
Yeah, he's down
So
right now, and
I don't know. Marco Raya has had one of the most kind of incomprehensible seasons because his overall numbers aren't very good. But he's had individual games that make you go, he's got something there. So that might be more of a relief option anyway. But the Twins don't have,
yeah,
the Twins don't really have a lot of better options if we assume that Ober is not lacking confidence and that he's healthy.
Yeah.
So that's why they have kept him out there to try and work this out on the fly, and it's a difficult thing to do.
And I will say this before we head off to break: we have gotten, as a general population, way too comfortable speculating on the psychology of these guys, and it's not necessarily nefarious. We put our experiences as human beings and athletes in the past on them. If I struggle, I know I lose confidence. Well, when you kind of turn that into he's obviously this, he's obviously that, we've gotten a little too comfortable with that. I do want to do that. We'll maybe discuss that a little more when we come back. And then I also want to talk about something that they used to do for things like this that they don't anymore. And this is not me yelling at a cloud. So just rest assured, we'll be right back and I'll explain what I'm talking about. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you are about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or some high-stakes soccer action, football, if you are from Del Mundo, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling by getting some action on it? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburnt at the beach, or in my case, sunburnt mowing their lawn and doing landscaping. Not quite as fun, but if you use FanDuel, you can use it to track your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions, fun ways to bet. And even if it's not a game that you're 100% locked in on for any reason, there's a matchup coming up here. It's Garrett Crochet against, and it's one of the young studs. I don't remember if it's Skeens or Mizorowski. Anyway, coming up here, those are the kinds of games you can monitor from afar and get some action on besides. Makes it really a fun, comprehensive experience. And whether you're watching a same-game parlay or riding a bet into the ninth inning, it makes you feel, FanDuel that is, that you are in on the action. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Dave, I was thinking about Ober and how teams handled stuff like this in the past. And a name that came to me, and it's not because they're anything similar, is Ramon Ortiz. I don't know if you remember Ramon Ortiz.
Yeah.
Pitched for the Angels for a while. And I think he had pretty big ears because I remember the distinguishing features about him. But when he went sideways, they moved him to the bullpen. Teams used to move guys to the bullpen. That's not really an option here, but it feels like I don't think teams really do that anymore, do they? Send him out to the bullpen. And that's an old school, remember when we were talking about bullpens and it was more along the lines of he's not out there to get saves, he's out there to get work because the starter went sideways. Bullpens when they first started were not the guys throwing 92 back when everybody threw 88. It was the guys that weren't good enough to start.
I was trying to think of a medical analogy, like what doctors or people who call themselves doctors used to treat people. And I was going to make fun of leeches. They always used to put leeches on people to suck the bad out. And actually there's some therapeutic benefit to leeches, but it's something like that. There was an old Saturday Night Live skit that Steve Martin did called Theodoric of York, Medieval Barber. And people would not only go to him for haircuts, like you every Friday with your guy, but they would go to him for medical issues. And he would prescribe things that don't work, but people thought they did at the time. I think, sending the guy to the bullpen is something that people thought would work and doesn't necessarily work. It works if your stuff plays a certain way, if you're more effective as a relief pitcher in shorter doses. I mean, we've seen that with Lou Varland. We've seen it with Griffin Jacks. Maybe we would see it with SWR. So
Glenn Perkins. I mean, it's
Glenn Perkins.
So
that's the thing.
Rogers, etc.
that was a thing. I'm not sure if Bailey Ober. I mean, Bailey doesn't have those guys had Perkins. I'm not sure actually, but or don't remember anymore. But upper tier fastballs.
Yeah,
That's
Perkins. No, he didn't throw very hard.
It was different thing with him, but the upper tier fastball and everything playing off that is really is the basis for why you'd put a Varland or a Jackson in the bullpen, and the shorter doses and all that. We don't see Jax pitch 2 innings ever.
Well, I don't even mean to stay either. It was like a quick stopover in the bullpen and then come back. I just don't think that's how the game works anymore.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. Who do you get to start? And then you start right. Starting Coulomb, and they might be doing that anyway. They might be putting him in the game a lot as the opener
for Festa.
You can't, for things like that. It depends on how much depth you have with relief pitchers in your minors. Just because if you do that, you're still going to have to make up those innings somewhere. If you're not planning on getting 6 or 7 out of Bailey Ober every time he goes out. You mentioned Ramon Ortiz going to the bullpen. Another thing that I always think of when something goes wrong for a starter is Roy Halladay. When he got his mechanics messed up at some point, he had been in the league for 3 years or something, and then the Phillies sent him all the way down to instructional league
Blue Jays
to rebuild. That's correct. Yeah,
so like Dunedin. I think they sent him to Dunedin.
Yeah, they did. This is before before he got to be Roy Halladay,
it was like Jose Barrios, though. Jose Barrios is like, if you look at lists of pitchers who had the highest ERA after X number of starts, and then try to find anybody who was any good, Roy Halladay is on that list. Jose Barrios is on that list. He had like a 7-something ERA after 10. Like it was bad. Those are like the two guys everyone kind of clings to, and so for Halladay, it was like, rebuild this guy. And they've had a few guys like that. Ricky Romero was another one I believe they sent a way back. And then Alek Manoah, who now has been hurt, was another guy who just completely lost it in a physical sense, of course. So yeah, I don't know that that's something they do. This isn't a Miguel Sano situation in any way, shape, or form. But it's bad. It's getting bad enough where sometimes you do have to think of drastic measures.
Yeah, I don't know if that method of sending him down to the complex league, I think it's called, in Florida these days, is what could fix him. But it's a huge challenge for Pete Mackey to find that interval between the changeup and the fastball, so he stops giving up home runs, because the pitches all look alike.
Well, and repertoire-wise, we'll get into specifics here in our final segment, but as far as usage, he hasn't changed very much. So in 2024, he threw the fastball 38.1% of the time. This is grouping them all together. The breaking ball, 32.5%, and the off-speed, 29.4%. So this year, his fastball is 41.1%, so that's a jump of 3%. Breaking ball is 30.7%, so drop of about 2%. And off-speed down to 28.2%, so drop of about 1%. So that's as simple as situational. If you are behind a couple more guys than you were before and need to throw 3% more fastballs, that's easy. Like that comes out in the wash. As far as like specific pitches, 4-seam last year, 38.1, 38.3 this year, almost exactly the same. He's mixed in a 2-seamer 2.8% of the time that he didn't throw before. I would keep an eye on that too. We saw it with Simeon Woods Richardson, and we haven't talked about this, but he's added a split. And maybe that's where Ober is like, hey, I give up a lot of homers. I may as well see if I can put something with a little sink on it to give him another view. Even if it's 3-4 times a game and a guy hits a weak grounder instead of squaring it up, it's something to consider. Sweeper usage down a little bit, added a couple curveballs, but by and large, he's doing mostly the same things. I'd have to look on a start-by-start basis to see, when a guy's got 2.8% sinker to this point in the season, it might have been something he threw early and scrapped. It might have been something he's come up with later. On a game-by-game basis, I'm going to just pull this up because now I'm interested. Game-by-game, 2-seam sinkers for Bailey Ober, starting with the beginning of the season. Yeah, he's kind of played around with it. He has scrapped it entirely the last 2 outings. So I think maybe he peaked at 9% against the Mets in a game they won in April. I wonder if it's not a pitch where if things are going well, he's trying to like bring it along, but because things have gone so poorly, he's kind of like, you know what, the time for experimentation is actually gone rather than. Does that make sense?
For sure. If you look at how effective his pitches have been this season compared to last year when he was good, his changeup has lost 17 points in run value. It was 16 last year, and I don't exactly know how they calculate that, but he threw it 29% of the time, had 16 points of run value. He's -1 now. His four-seam fastball actually is a little more valuable than it was last
I
year.
got a fun note on that. Yep.
But we can get to it after our break, I guess. But he's also, his sweeper has not been effective. Last year, it was pretty effective. He didn't throw it a lot, maybe about 12% of the time. He's throwing it less this year because he's getting killed with it.
Yep.
He throws a slider, but it really hasn't been any more or less effective than last year. Not really effective at all. So he doesn't have a lot of options. He doesn't have a cutter in his arsenal. You mentioned SWR throwing a splitter. Those things don't just come overnight. They work on the side. They work sometimes for months or years on it.
Oh, especially with a split
in the game.
A split is a dangerous pitch to experiment. You need it to be refined. He's probably been working on it a year before he's even tried it, I would guess.
So I don't know what they have or they're working on in the bullpens. That actually isn't something that they're going to tell us until it comes into a game. They want it to be a surprise for the other team.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Pete Mackey's cooking up, but now's the time to, if there's anything, take it out of the oven.
All right. So when we come back here, I want to talk about how each specific pitch is working, or in this case, more so not working for Ober. The four-seamer is an interesting one. We're going to break that down here in just a moment. Hit the wrong button. Don't mind me. But we are back. Locked On Twins, final segment. And June is Ober. And now it's time for Ober to get under the hood and figure some things out with his pitch mix because it has not been pretty. We've already established, I think, that you really can't shut him down for myriad reasons. It's you need him. Teams will make decisions that are for the better of the player or the better of the team. In this case, both are true, I think. I think the Twins need Ober. Ober needs the Twins to both be like this. Because if the Twins had an opportunity, again, to go get player X, whether it's a minor league or a free agent, a trade, and you could back off from him, at least that's a conversation you can have. I don't think you can even entertain that right now. So it's again, because they're not doing anything to... What's the word? Is it deleterious to his...
That's very fancy, Brandon. I don't know.
But you're not ruining his psyche by running him out there. He's an established big leaguer. It stinks, and it's going to take him a while to come back from it. But it's a thing where you'll be glad you pushed through because on the other end is Bailey Ober from last year or the year before.
The only player, Rich Hill, is out there. I know I've said it before, and I'm very often half joking.
Yeah, didn't they say if he wants a major league deal, they'll let him go? Like if someone comes with one?
Yes, that's what they said. If you can find a guaranteed major league deal, maybe that's not in the cards because of payroll restrictions. I know. What? I mean,
they DFA'd Jonah Bride. Much, but they DFA'd Jonah Bride, so there is a 40-man spot. They
did, yeah. Sure. So they could have put Bride in the. They could have sent it. Well, could they have sent him?
No. They DFA'd him because they couldn't option him. That's the same reason why the Marlins DFA'd him. I just mean though they didn't DFA him for a non-roster player. The writing is on the wall. It's going to be Royce Lewis. So there's a 40-man spot for whoever. I mean, you have to convince them that this player is worth that. Dickie Lovelady. an option at one point before. And I think if the Twins had knew he was going to go by Dickie Lovelady, they may have pushed a little faster. But no, I'm kidding.
Sometimes you have to let the team know that you want your Dickie to come out.
Yeah, let your freak flag fly or some dumb thing. I don't know. But
if your half idea about putting Bailey Ober in the bullpen is something that they could do, and remember
I'm not advocating. I'm just saying we don't really do it anymore, and it's interesting to me how the game has changed.
It might, if Ober's going to pitch 6 innings and give up 6 runs every time, loosely, maybe it would be better if he pitched 2 innings and gave up 2 runs. So while he works this out, and maybe that could be solved by bringing in our old friend, and I mean that literally and figuratively, Rich Hill, to the rotation for a while. But then again, I like, how could it be? What's I guess other than a guaranteed contract, what could it hurt? But maybe that can hurt.
And it's just occurring to me, not bringing up Dickie Lovelady to sign Dick Mountain eventually. Like, there's some fun parallels there, and there's also a fun parallel of you and I are both like, hey, there's an old friend out there, Kyle Gibson, Rich Hill. I mean, I don't know that either are. We're into Bartolo Colon, Dallas Keuchel. I'm trying to think, Tim Melville territory here. Like, you maybe don't even remember the Twins had Tim Melville start a game about.
Is that another Dick reference because of Moby Dick?
No, although I wish I could take credit. No, I love Tim Melville because I think he was part of that Baby Royals crew with Hosmer and Moustakas, wasn't he? Melville was one of the pitchers.
I think I don't remember that.
I'm on to something, or I'm on something.
I don't know who you're talking about, Brandon. I really don't.
Tim Melville? You don't remember Tim Melville?
I don't remember Tim Melville.
He was a Royals prospect. Anyway, they're into that spot where, like the dog day, maybe not the dog days of summer, but the middle of summer when you start doing some moves where, when we make our opening day roster projections and there's guys way at the back and we're like, oh, they'd never get to that. That's the 30th guy. And before you know it, you're 3 weeks in and Darren McCacken is pitching for you. And you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming. We've fully reached that point with the Twins where it's time to get creative. And I don't know if they're at that point, but I think it's funny that we're both talking about a guy who on either side used to be a Twin. You had mentioned the 4-seam fastball. I feel like I'm shouting. I apologize. The 4-seamer last year, opponents hit 261. This year, it's 258. So by batting average, it's close. Batting average matters. By slugging percentage, which I care more about, 435 this year, 506 last year. So the slower fastball, by about 1.5 miles per hour, he's actually allowing a lower slug and about the same batting average. Where he's getting absolutely annihilated, the sweeper, 385 average, 885 slug. Last year, 105 and 171. So he has had a 700 point increase in slugging percentage on his sweeper. On his changeup, last year, 154 and 285. This year, 239 and 410. 135 point jump in slugging percentage, about 80 point jump in batting average. So when the slug jumps more than the batting average, it's extra base hits. But the 4-seam fastball, the slider has been bad this year, but not markedly worse than last year. The slider was just not a good pitch for him last year. Maybe we're romanticizing a version of Bailey Ober that didn't really exist. I mean, last year he was I think like a 1.6 Fangraphs WAR pitcher, sub-4 ERA, gives up too many homers. Is it possible we have expectations that are too high? And are you surprised that his fastball numbers this year are actually, the 4-seam fastball, better than last?
Maybe a little bit, but also I feel like the fastball's effectiveness can be quantified in ways beyond how it when it's thrown, because it sets up the other pitches and is a difference between, like, I think the problem with the changeup is how he's throwing the fastball. I think those things are related. I think maybe he's not getting hurt on his fastball, but I think in the way that it differentiates itself between the other pitches, it's less effective than it was last year. And I think that is part of why he gets hurt when he throws other pitches that kind of look like a fastball, but are not what you want. So, it's, I guess there's layers to this, but it's, are we romanticizing Ober a little bit? Anytime, unless the guy, has turned into Greg Maddux, at some point, velocity is going to matter more. And if he's not going to be as effective with the difference between a fastball and a changeup, that's going to portend doom for his other pitches. And, I don't know if that is the only reason why his sweeper isn't effective, but I can't imagine that it helps. So, those basic things right now are tweaks that the Twins apparently have to make on the run. And I don't know how much more, Ober could take at this point before he starts to lose confidence. A few more games like this, and it could happen to anybody.
Yeah, it's just curious to me that the slider is about the same, but the sweeper is that much different when you have all the old heads insisting they're the same pitch. But that's for another time. Thank you again for making Locked On Twins your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. You can find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Time to feed some ducks. Time to get out of here, Dave Brown. It has been an absolute delight. Again, he's Dave Brown. I'm Brandon Warne saying thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see ya
tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.